probably know, used to be a famous country western singer. That just wasn't enough for her. She had lots of wigs and she had buses and everything, but that just was not satisfying her deep down in her soul. So at some point she had a flash of light, you know, like Saul on the bus of Damascus, and she decided that she had to stop being a famous country western singer and start being a famous lesbian performance artist. And I've been traveling around all over the world trying to figure out exactly how to be a lesbian. And that's a worthwhile pursuit, I'll tell you. And how to be a performance artist. And that's also a fairly worthwhile pursuit. Sometimes it's more difficult than being a lesbian. So, as I said, my name is Tammy, and I share a body with Lois Weaver. And Tammy was born in 1980. No, that's not true. She was born in 1978 when she was working with Spider-Woman Theater Company. So Tammy was born then. And then she got kind of reincarnated with the Split Bridges Company in 1984 when we did a show called Upwardly Mobile Home. And that's when Tammy's true soul came alive, because Tammy became the person that Lois could not be when she comes and does these kind of things, because she was the person who could maintain a spirit of wonder in the face of anything. She could ask the questions that Lois was embarrassed to ask. She could be dumb and naive on behalf of everybody. And the other thing I've been doing is using Tammy to try to facilitate public engagement. Now, I know those are big words, those belong to Lois. So I've been using Tammy to do that, and I've worked on a couple of pieces in relationship to that. And the most recent one that I've been working on is one called What Tammy Needs to Know About Getting Old and Having Sex. And so I've been doing some research, you know. The main thing we want to talk about right now is this idea of muses. What is a muse? And Tammy, I suppose, is a muse for Lois. That moment when Tammy comes into the body, you can say and do things you could never have thought about, you know, on your own, sitting in your little house writing something down. I've been thinking about the whole project. I haven't been thinking so specifically, aside for Dolly, who was going to be my muse, except I kept thinking about my Aunt Edna. And I had this Aunt Edna who, you know, I grew up in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. That's real. That's Lois and Tammy. And nobody ever went anywhere except Aunt Edna lived in Washington. And she came to visit us on the train. And that was pretty exotic. And she took a cab, which my mother did not approve of. And I couldn't even say the word cab. It sounded dirty every time I said, and so I said taxi for the longest time. But now I can say cab. But anyway, and whenever she came with 3 suitcases, all matching luggage. I'd never seen anything like that because no one ever went anywhere. We didn't need luggage. And I swear to God, she'd be in the house 5 minutes. She'd go into her bag, she'd pull out her jewelry box, which was about that big, and she'd set it up on the dining room table, and she'd set me up on the dining room table. And I'd spend the rest of the day inside her jewelry box when I still have some of that jewelry. And so I could not think of Aunt Edna when I thought about who my muse was, and also because for some reason I seemed to be the recipient of butch lesbian's mother's stuff. When the mother dies or the grandmother dies, and there's a fur coat, you know, or a fantastic hat, I get it. And I got this fantastic collection. I'm thinking, how can I put that on display? Because it's very precious. And so I'm trying to figure out a little bit how to do that. But I told them this story about my Aunt Edna because after a while, you know, this happened when women were kind of too independent and didn't pay attention like my mama used to worry. She said, you're going to turn out just like your Aunt Edna. Of course I have. And but anyway, she had to come back and live with us, and she slept with us, and she weighed 250 pounds or more. She was really wide and short. And she would sit on the edge of my bed when I was about 6, and she would take off her corset. And it was one of those pink corsets, you know, that kind of pink stuff that came out in the 20s that was supposed to look like skin, you know, that kind of pink. And she'd sit and undo it, and I would just watch her sort of flesh release from that, and then she'd roll over it, and I had no choice but roll right into her. And I think that was sort of the budding of my lesbian days. I loved that moment. I just couldn't wait. I watched her take off her corset, and then when she laid down, I just couldn't wait for that moment when I would just roll into her. Oh, okay, that's enough of that. Okay. I got all excited there.